It's very difficult to address what's happening in the video game industry at the moment without starting this video saying, they've completely lost their minds. We've basically had 3 of the most telling weeks of what is actually going on with the industry, and everything in those 3 weeks is kind of a microcosm that then paints a bigger picture. Nintendo, knowingly, by their own admission, decided to price out so much of their customer base with the Switch 2. They pulled a Don Matrick over from Xbox and told people that if they didn't have the money for a Switch 2, that's why they're still supporting the Switch 1, while awkwardly fumbling their way through a justification of raising the price of their games to $80 to $90 depending on where you live, potentially more. Immediately after that, we got to experience some fantastic video game releases, the head of which I would say is Expedition 33, a game that is being sold for $50 that managed to somehow sell out physical copies. It was even sold out on Amazon, got congratulated by the president of France. The collective gaming community is losing their minds over it because it turns out that when you make a great game that respects the player, has a fair price, and is just overall amazing with everything that it does, people will buy it and enjoy it. But similarly, a lot of people were very happy with things like Oblivion Remastered, also a budget game now, and plenty of people have sat down to say that the best reviewed games and some of the best performing games when it comes to actual sales this year are not $70, they're not $80, they're not huge AAA games, and instead we get to see things like Clair Obscur up there as the best rated game of the year, followed by Split Fiction and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, which, even though Split Fiction is published by EA, definitely is an indie game. And Joseph Fares, the director over at Hazelight, echoes a lot of things that people like Sven Vink over at Larian have said for many years now, of just make good games and stop trying to milk customers and somehow ruin the lives of your employees. We even saw the release of the 100 line Last Defense Academy, which I can't wait to have the time to sink into because I'm a huge fan of both of the creators of that. For those of you who don't know, this is a visual novel and strategy RPG that is a collaboration between the person responsible for Danganronpa and the person responsible for 999/Virtue's Last Reward. And people are saying that it's a masterpiece of a game that is very much created with a very specific vision that will make people who like those things just fall in love with it. And of course, in case you didn't know or hadn't guessed it already, yeah, they made a company, 2Kyo, which they had to basically place on the line for the success of this game. It either succeeds and the company continues, or the game doesn't succeed and they have to close down, because that's what happens when you risk it all on something you believe in. Shoutouts to Sandfall, by the way, the team that made Expedition 33, for shouting out the 100 line on Twitter. It's the sort of heartwarming, wholesome thing that you like to see. And so, as everybody is losing their minds over this narrative of indie games and games that are just made without this sort of association and just reliance on selling and hitting targets and Metacritics and all of these things, the next 2 big pieces of news we get is that GTA 6 is delayed until May of next year. Congratulations, Expedition 33, by the way. And almost as if to say, hey, we were kind of waiting to see what happened with Nintendo and with GTA, but now that GTA is out of the picture, Microsoft just came in and said, yeah, we're raising the prices of games too, and also the prices of our consoles, because I guess that having consoles drop in price over a generation is not how things are supposed to work. You know, you're supposed to buy them when they release. That's when they're going to be cheapest. I think that's what they're trying to convince us of. It is unironically a pretty funny advertisement that Microsoft just pulled out for the incredibly expensive Switch 2, because, you know, reinforcing that idea that actually hardware gets more expensive without any improvements over time. And I do think all of these different news things, all of these news blurbs that have happened in the last 3 weeks are just a condensed version that really highlights that we are at a critical point in video games and what this industry and what it means to us as just people who want to play games is at a very uncomfortable crossing. I've been saying it for a while, but it just feels so much more tangible looking at these things in sequence for me to reaffirm that pretty much everything about video games is changing, both for better and for worse. But don't worry, it's still a video made by me, so I'm pretty sure you're gonna leave feeling more optimistic than pessimistic. Spoiler alert. And oh, right, by the way, hi, I'm Mug, and if you're new here, welcome. And if you're not new here, welcome back. It's really nice to see you, and you're looking just dapper. I'm gonna use the word dapper today. And this video is going to be a little more conversational than some of my other videos, because we do have to talk a bit more about the industry and the economy outside of video games. But we're mostly going to answer the questions of what is happening right now? What is this? Why is it happening? And why does it feel like the industry is gambling? And if they fail in that gamble, which I will show you why I think it's not a smart one. The video game crash is not just some pie in the sky story anymore. It is actually the potential for everything to come crashing down. And don't worry, we're gonna be winning at the end of that. So as per usual, if you enjoy the video at any point, hit the like button, because that helps the video reach more people, which I think is cool. And also, you don't have to subscribe right now. Don't do that. Just think about it. And if I earn your subscription, heck, even if you want to go and check out some of my other videos afterwards, just want to make sure you feel okay with your subscription. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. Now we need to start off with a slightly strange and uncomfortable question. Why are video game prices going up, and does that make sense? And unfortunately, the answer to that is it's complicated. On one hand, it is very true that inflation is a thing, that the way that the economy is trending is in the direction of money being worth less, and therefore things have to go up in price. I don't think that's a very controversial statement. I'm pretty sure we can all go to the supermarket and just experience it. If we look at that, it makes complete sense that in a linear fashion, as those expenses go up and video games are made by people that, you know, want to maintain at the very minimum their status in life and their quality of life, would now need to generate more money to compensate for that change. But it's just that that change overall is done at a very different scale than what we might feel as individuals, because I will not get tired of saying this to everybody who tells me to use an inflation calculator. In most places, for most people, wages are not keeping up with inflation. And that's where a lot of the disconnect comes from. But after saying that it's logical for games to go up in price like many other things are, there is a more important question lurking beneath that we've been asking for many years and simply has become more relevant now. Why? Why are games so expensive to the point that now they have to keep increasing? Because we've now seen time and time again, and even immediately, right now, in the middle of all of this, that you don't need to make that much money. You don't need to sell video games at those prices to have a successful game out in the market that works as a product, that maintains the company and has everybody go home with their salaries paid for so that they can have their mortgage or whatever. If that were so impossible to do, why is Clair Obscur Expedition 33 as great as it is, made by a team of 33 developers, 32 humans, and one very good boy? Good boy, Monoko. Look at him, he's so cute. Why is Split Fiction, made by a company like Hazelight, much bigger, much closer in scope to just like traditional AAA, not just being sold for $50, but in a very generous way with their whole implementation of, hey, you can play this with whoever you want with just one copy, anywhere, anytime. That's a co-op game. We want to eliminate the barrier. So if you wanted to look at it that way, you know, it's cheaper than $50 because it's an experience for two people that doesn't cost the other person $50. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is just an absolute majesty of a game in many different ways. A very niche game that many people would say was not going to be popular or actually be successful because of the target audience for it. And not only is it just amazing and has reached way outside of that niche to be commercially very successful, but it's the type of game that is receiving tons of additional updates. How is it possible that we keep seeing more and more games release at a lower price than what we are told is supposed to be the new price, that are either equal or better in quality than those expensive games? We are consistently seeing how things that appeal to very niche demographics that have been neglected or ignored for a very long time. Not very true with the case of the JRPG, if you want to call it that, of Clair Obscur, but stuff like dedicated co-op games with split fiction, or hardcore medieval immersive simulation thing with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Heck, even 2 Point Museum is a great example of this. And it's very hard to look at that situation and then keep asking questions and not reach the conclusion that, sure, the going's getting tough, but there are people out there that are adapting to smaller teams that are willing to have better ideas that, when put into a game, make it very compelling to people. And then there's other companies that I don't want to fall into the typical thing that we always say of this is what happens when you go public and have to report to shareholders, but it's just very coincidental that most of them are, that are passing the costs of where we are right now in the world onto their customers. And when that is combined with the way that they have to play it safe and really be careful with what they do and what they say, there starts to be this huge disconnect between us, the people who want to play games, and them, the people who are making them and trying to make money off of them primarily. I think that the best way of describing it is that they seem to continue to aim for an audience they believe exists of just mindless consumers that will buy the big shiny thing with a ton of marketing behind it, no matter its price. And I believe that is a fundamental misunderstanding of not just the economy worldwide and how people are choosing to view the current difficulties of the economic situation, but also the way that the average video game player has changed over time. And you know, the average age of a gamer has increased, and the average dedication and knowledge base of people who buy games increases basically every day. Be that because they're more concerned about how they spend their money, or because it's a hobby worth getting into, to the point that basically casuals are relegated to people who play mobile games or sports games, I guess. Because if you're really deep into some live service game, some Marvel Rivals or Overwatch or Apex or something, odds are you're probably also on YouTube and reading articles and staying at least slightly up to date with what's trending and what's cool. And that's if you're not part of a surprising majority of gamers that just refuse to buy new games most of the time and enjoy buying stuff that's older on discount or going through the increasingly large catalog of fantastic games from over the entire history that they have been made now, and enjoying all of that. I think a different way of looking at it or phrasing it is that the entire world and entertainment and media have been moving in the direction of catering more to the individual, of saying you're special and we're gonna make a game that satisfies you. And in a world where that is true and more people are expressing what they want to see in games that will very specifically cater to a crowd that will love them, there's still these gigantic corporations that need to make a certain amount of money by the end of the year, trying to struggle in making games that will satisfy everyone, that will have everyone that is mildly interested in games suddenly wake up excited to go to Walmart to buy the big thing that had an advertisement during a TV spot break, whatever, who watches TV. If you need an example of just how unsustainable this model is for AAA as we keep going down this road, Respawn had to lay off over 100 people. And we had heard that the Apex Legends numbers are bad, but it's just so difficult to imagine how bad things are actually going, but it's obviously going incredibly poorly. These systems are not sustainable, to the point that the writer of the latest Apex Legends character got fired 24 hours after they revealed the character she wrote. Like, what a celebration, right? Like, I think that's something to empathize with. Like, imagine you've been working your entire career to finally getting, you know, your idea of a character and their story in the game, and you do it, and you get fired. What? It really just puts into perspective the unrealistic expectations that they have to meet, and just how absolutely gone some of them are compared to the bloated companies that we have. And of course, the worst part of it all is ridiculous expenses associated to all of that is being thrown onto that customer. And because there are alternatives and there are actual games that are proving time and time again that you don't need to operate with the extreme budgets and the extreme requirements of profit at the end of the day that a lot of these games have, we look at things like those successes, like a lot of the games that have been very popular in the last 2 years and have been called over and over again anomalies, starting from things like Baldur's Gate 3. And as those continue to be more successful than those other big games, we stare down a lot of these decisions of prices going up and excuses that are made as to why what we receive at the end of it is worse, and say, you are lying. This is your problem, and you're trying to get me to accept it and pay for it. And by the way, just to be clear, when I say that they are more successful, I'm not here to compare how much Madden or something or Assassin's Creed sells compared to Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. It's about the difference between how much it costs to make one of those games versus how much it costs to make the other. You know, it's about the profit margin when it comes to success and being able to fund more projects, which is what we should care about. They know that they're going to be good projects that can be funded. But I hope that looking at it this way really explains that more initial look at it. They are betting on keeping this system going, a system that feels increasingly more unsustainable and out of touch with the customer. But a world where video games become even more luxury and more inaccessible than they have been in the past. But the rules of the market and how the average customer has enough disposable income in order to spend on that and time to spend on that is inevitable. The laws of the market can't be bent. They can't be magically twisted to have their system be sustainable when on every single metric it doesn't make sense. Because these are the two things that are going to happen. As games keep increasing in price and console prices go up and there's just more gatekeeping around it, specifically because of money, everybody's going to be very carefully comparing all of these $80 to $90 games, and they will only spend their money on the very, very best. Which does mean that overall sales will go down, but the need for even higher budgets to make the best game possible will go up. I personally don't think that's sustainable just because they bumped the price up by $10, and I think they heavily underestimate what $10 is to a lot of people. But the other thing that's going to happen is that there's going to be a break in the market where people who understand what we want are going to be able to take great advantage of that. There's going to be studios out there making fantastic games with lower budgets, finding ways to reduce cost while making fantastic games, and they are going to be looking at what's going on and say, oh, you want to raise your prices to $80? We're going to sell our amazing looking game for $50. And no microtransactions, no live services. And the customer is going to look at it, and as evidenced by all of these successes, we're going to say, that's awesome. I want to support you. This is a great game. I'm going to buy this full price because I can buy 2 incredible games at this level, or 1 bloated microtransaction riddled AAA game for that same price. That is how markets change, and that is, as I've been saying for a pretty long time now, how new studios get to make a lot of money and grow and invest in bigger teams and bigger projects and take over for what a lot of other companies are now lacking. It's just that the current situation is this massive, massive divide. And from my perspective, I think that the future is looking pretty clear. The meek shall inherit the earth or something like that. But what's funny about it is that it didn't need to go that way. If in this situation Goliath had decided to kneel and just acquiesce towards the customer, just be nice, man, just be chill for a moment and kind of do something smart about it, surprisingly, David would not beat them. But that doesn't seem to be what's happening. I, for one, continue to hammer home that I think we're in a beautiful golden age of gaming where more and more teams with smaller and smaller budgets can create incredible games that rival some of the best games ever made, or anything that AAA alleges is impossible to do with small budgets and small teams. We have just a myriad of indies that cater to very specific tastes that I think are incredibly fun and makes anybody interested in the hobby very happy at low prices. And in a twisted way, I think it's great that if they are going to try and compete for these ridiculously high prices in this economy, that they are going to be pushed into making the best of all of the games releasing at $80. If there's one important takeaway that I want to add before we wrap this up, it's that it is also creating a very clear system where games and their prices are going to be more fluid than ever before. And again, that's just going to push forward the idea that the average consumer will have to be more tuned into the news and the hobby and what's going on around it. Because it's going to become difficult to explain that there are games that cost $80 because they're premium games, but there's also games that cost $50 that are just better than those, and then there's games that cost $30, some that cost $20, some that cost $60, and how sometimes the price of the thing has absolutely nothing to do with the quality of it. But that's something that I think we'll have a much better grasp on, I'd say, by this holiday season. In any case, I think that this is a little bit of a lot more inside baseball kind of technical thing to talk about, but I really, really wanted to talk about it, so I hope that it was still enjoyable to you if you made it all the way to the end of this video. There was a lot less talk about just games and game design and stuff like that, and a lot more about economy and how a lot of the market is shaping out, but I think that is important for us to know where trends are headed, and it does, at the end of the day, make us very happy that it's going to trend positively. At least for us, the customer, which I will keep saying is the only part about this entire thing that I honestly care about. It's you. It's just a very strange combination of so many different circumstances coming together into like this perfect explosion of chaos that I think could lead to something fun. In any case, I've been Mug, and thank you so much for watching. You made it all the way to the end. You know, hit the like button if you forgot to do that before, and hey, consider checking out the channel, maybe even subscribing if you like the way that I cover news, reviews, retrospectives, and of course, essays and strange diatribes on the industry like this one. A very special thanks to the members of The Wall who support me either on Patreon or here on YouTube with the join button down below, and more info on all of that in the description. I am eternally grateful. And hey, I got to talk about some really good games this video as well, so go out there, enjoy some great games, and I'll see you again very soon.